truly excited to welcome Kim Greene to our club. So if you please join me in welcoming Kim Greene. She's Chairman, President, and CEO of Georgia Power, a leader whose career is defined by impact, strength, and purpose. With more than 3 decades in the energy industry, Kim leads with a servant's heart, stepping forward when communities need her most. The best representation of her leadership is during Hurricane Helene, the most devastating storm in our state's history. She reflected both proactive crisis management, compassion, and resolve as she worked alongside her teams to restore power and hope when it mattered most to our communities. She pretty much assembled, I think it was 11 utilities across North America and Canada to come to the state when it mattered most. Under her leadership, Georgia Power, Southern Company's largest subsidiary, serving 2.8 million customers, continues to be recognized among the nation's most admired energy companies, driven by culture rooted in safety, innovation, and people. Kim's journey from power plant engineer to CEO exemplifies leadership built on listening first, empowering others, and putting communities at the center of every single decision. A respected voice in the future of energy, she leads not for recognition, but for impact. And the people she serves are stronger because of it. A little information about her background, and it spans across our enterprise. Former Chairman, President, and CEO of Southern Company Gas. Is her former role, she served 4.3 million utility customers across 4 states and 600,000 retail customers through South Star Energy Services. She led across the enterprise at Southern Company and Tennessee Valley Authority, otherwise known as TVA, including roles at Southern Company EVP and COO, President of Southern Company Services, and TVA Chief Financial Officer and Chief Generation Officer. She has a 34-year energy leader who began as Southern Company engineer in 1991, recognized for safety and innovation, including the EEI's Thomas F. Farrell Award, and holds advanced engineering and business degrees. So a little personal story, what stands out about Kim to me the most, besides her huge heart, servant leadership, and curiosity about everything, is her ability to connect across the company and make time to dig deep at her level. On week 1, when she became CEO of Georgia Power, she scheduled a meeting with our team in economic development and unabashedly asked all the questions about every aspect of our business, even though she had deep experience in her former career in economic development at TVA. She frequently calls on me on subjects that wants all the data. When I say all the data, I have a lot of data, okay? She asked me to read about it the night before a talk. I'll say, I've got like 20 documents on data centers. Now, give me all the data. And I asked Ben, are you sure she wants all the data? Yep, she wants all the data. Like, okay. I think this comes from her engineer roots, and she wants to empower others, but also deeply understand subjects while she leads. And I respect her immensely and so proud that she is our CEO. So please help me welcome her.
And to the extent that you have questions about anything that I talk about, I want to do my best to try to clarify that before you guys go, because you're in Georgia, and Georgia is unique, and we should feel very proud of the market structure and the utilities that we have, and the legislature and the Public Service Commission, and it's unique. And again, it's allowing us to do some things that are not happening in other parts of the country. So I'll talk about that. So again, Jennifer talked a little bit about Georgia Power, and I'm sure most of you know who Georgia Power is. And yes, I had the privilege of starting at Georgia Power in 1991 as an engineer designing equipment for power plants. And one of the power plants that I worked in was a nuclear plant called Plant Vogtle, which is outside of Augusta. And back in 1992 and 93, I thought, wow, wouldn't it be great if we could build more nuclear plants here in the state of Georgia? And it was just a wonderful serendipitous moment when I had the chance to actually usher in 2 new nuclear units here in Georgia, Vogtle Units 3 and 4. And so it's been a wonderful career for me and a wonderful opportunity to be a part of a company that cares about the products that we provide, because electricity is something that people can't live without for very long. And also to be a part of the community and make sure that we're making communities better. And economic development has been at the heart of that for almost 100 years. In fact, next year, our economic development organization will celebrate 100 years of partnering with the state and with communities to grow and bring jobs and bring a thriving economy to many parts of the state. So let me start by talking about something that is changing. So a lot of what I've talked about, like Georgia Power has been around for over 140 years. We've been doing economic development for almost 100 years, and we've served lots of customers. We serve residential customers, commercial customers, and large industrial customers, and we're very proud to be able to do all of that in a way that benefits all. We have 2.8 million meters, 2.8 million customers in Georgia. And over the past 20 years, we've served data centers. And there are a lot of data centers here in Atlanta, and we've served data centers. We know how to serve them. They're certainly providing great service to all of us. But about 3 years or so ago, something changed about that market and that customer. And it was simply the size of that customer. And so what we're seeing now is a new era of growth arriving in Georgia. We haven't seen anything like this since really back in the 60s when air conditioning load really began to permeate the state. And Georgia Power at that time more than doubled the size of the company and the size of the load that it served from 1960 to 1970. So we haven't seen this type of percentage growth since that time. We also are seeing much more in terms of absolute growth. And data centers are coming to Atlanta and to Georgia for lots of reasons. Certainly Atlanta is a technology hub, and latency matters to a lot of the types of processes that they are running. But also just the ability to get power reliably and affordably is very important. And what makes the state of Georgia different, and it might not seem different to some of you because all you may have ever known is how Georgia Power is structured, but we operate in what we call a vertically integrated, state-regulated business model. Now, let me tell you what that means, vertically integrated. That means that we own and control power plants, those, and whether it's nuclear or natural gas or coal or solar or batteries, we own and or control that. We also own and or control transmission lines, and those are the big lines that are running usually. You see them if you're driving along the interstate. Those are the big transmission lines, the high voltage lines. We own and control those. And we also own and control distribution lines. Those are the smaller wires that go to your house or your business. And every 3 years, we go to the Public Service Commission, who regulates us. So the state regulated, we are regulated by 5 members of an elected Public Service Commission. And we go to them every 3 years with something called an IRP, an Integrated Resource Plan. And the reason it's called an Integrated Resource Plan is because we look at integrating all 3 parts of that value chain. And we're optimizing what is the best type of power plant to build, where is the best place to locate it, and then look at what the best place for transmission lines would be. Maybe we could have a power plant in this location, and that would help us lower the cost of transmission, the large wires. And then, of course, distribution. So we're optimizing and determining which combination of those assets is best for all of our customers. We've been doing that for a long time. Now, what's changed about that is that in many parts of the country, utilities like Georgia Power are no longer vertically integrated. And it was back in the the 90s. So again, I started in 1991. And I remember our CEO back then talking about deregulation is coming, right? And there were a lot of industries that were deregulated. Airlines, telephone companies, natural gas companies. And so it made sense to some people that because electricity and electrons look the same in California as they look in Georgia, that electricity is a commodity and should be traded like any other commodity, and that we should create financial markets that allow us to trade electricity. And to be able to do that and create these markets, vertically integrated utilities like Georgia Power, some names you might have heard of, like Commonwealth Edison, that is in largely Chicago in the Illinois area, Consolidated Edison that serves New York, Texas Utilities, was a big company in Texas. Those and many other utilities were broken up. And they were forced to sell their power plants, sell or give up control of their transmission lines, the big wires, and maybe they became a distribution-only utility, or maybe they stayed in the transmission business and sold the other parts off. And whether it's in the New England area or the Mid-Atlantic or Texas or California, financial markets were developed. And over time, those financial markets have evolved. And for a lot of reasons, those financial markets have created a situation where today the traditional supply and demand signals really are not working. And you talked about market effectiveness not being a thing. Well, in some of these electric markets, that's exactly right. The market has not worked as it was theoretically believed to work. And prices should be high, and that should incentivize a power plant developer to build a power plant. But there's not enough market transparency for enough of a period of time for somebody to be confident in building that power plant and ensuring that they're going to get a return, because most of these electric markets are only really viable for the very short term, 2, 3, maybe 4 or 5 years. But nevertheless, these different market structures are giving people pause about the fact that large data centers are coming with large requests for power. And what's happening is that the price signal has to go up to incentivize this other third party to bring in the power plant. And there's not one utility, for example, Commonwealth Edison, Consolidated Edison, Texas Utilities, they are not in control of all parts of the value chain. They've got to go to the market. And right now the market is saying prices are high and potentially supply is low. Let me assure you, not in Georgia. All right? Not in Georgia. We have processes. We're in control. When a large data center comes to Georgia, we say, hello, we're happy to serve you. And here's what we'll do for you. We're not taking power from our 2.8 million existing customers. We are building new assets. We know how much those cost. We're asking the data center to pay that. We'll go to our commission, get approval to move forward, then we go. And I'm going to talk about even a more beautiful part of this is that reliability is not impacted at all negatively. In fact, it is made better, and prices go down. Now, how can I talk about that? How can I say that? Well, I want to tell you, but first let me show you why I believe there's so much concern about this. Because it's very difficult to turn on a television. In fact, Michael and I were just talking about this. If you like this stuff, it's everywhere. You can't turn on a television or pick up a newspaper without reading something about data centers. And I'm sure you all know Andrew Ross Sorkin. And of course, I watch, and many people watch Squawk Box every day. So this was from late summer, and Andrew's speaking, and it's right after an auction in PJM, which is one of these market structures in the mid-Atlantic, and prices had settled extremely high. And so Andrew and Becky Quick on This Morning are talking about this situation.
I'm convinced that there are so many governors who are trying to bring data centers to their state. And 5 years from now, they are going to say to themselves, boy, do I wish that we had never done this. Because what it effectively does is raise the price of electricity
for your customers.
For your own customers. Because what's happening is...
For your, I should say for your consumers.
For your own residents.
Yeah.
Because what's happening is the data center gets built. The deal that any data center is making with the energy supplier says, by the way, you need to keep us up and running 99.999% of the time, which means the energy goes to me first, meaning energy data center first, before it goes to the customers. And watch, when there's a hurricane or there's some kind of terrible incident, and by the way, the power is working for the data center, but is not working in your home.
Or your hospital.
Or your hospital. You are going to see, I think, wild sort of social unrest, or at least questions about how this is all working.
So I could still hardly watch this without my heart skipping a beat. The idea that we're going to let hospitals go without power so that we can serve a data center, I assure you, will not happen anywhere in this country. But Andrew Ross Sorkin knows a lot of stuff, and a lot of people trust him and trust Becky Quick. And they watch this and they're scared. And sadly, he's in New York City. He's talking about the PJM auction, which is Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland area, Mid-Atlantic. There is something to be concerned about. Not in Georgia. Not in Georgia. And what I did not know a few months later is that I had gone to New York City to be on a panel with a woman who works at Google, and Georgia Power has signed a contract with Google, and we were at lunch with the Secretary of Energy, Chris Wright. And we were telling Secretary Wright about the good news in Georgia, that we are vertically integrated, we have processes that have been in place for decades, we're serving the load, it's going to make our grid even more reliable, and we're putting downward pressure on everybody else's rates because the data centers are paying all of their costs and then some. And so, again, we were at lunch with the secretary, but it wasn't just us. It was probably a group about this size. But we had a chance to talk to him. And the next morning, I turned on Squawk Box, and look who the guest is. The Secretary of Energy.
AI and just this big boom. There is a concern in some states already where there is a real effort to bring AI and AI data centers into these states, that the end result is actually driving up the cost of energy for the ordinary American.
So it is a balance, but ultimately AI done correctly, and that's what our whole thing, bring common sense, bring data. We're not this crazy alarmist band, but we can deliver AI and stop the rise in electricity prices. It takes some time because we've been digging a hole, make it very hard to produce firm capacity. Let me give you one example. Google signed a deal with Georgia Power, biggest utility in Georgia, to build a huge data center there. And with the way they're going to fund it, Georgia Power locked in their rates for 3 years, no increases. The ultimate impact of AI should be able to make our grid more secure and actually lower the average delivery.
He remembered it almost verbatim. And thank you, exactly. The reason he remembered it, because he had heard a lot that day, because we're different. We are unique. We're bringing all of this together in a way that benefits all of our customers, as well as the data centers. And they're proud of it. She was happy to tell the Secretary of Energy that they are paying a lot of money for power in Georgia. And they're happy to do it because they have all the confidence in us in being able to bring them the power that they need in a way that's going to benefit all of our customers. So please, when you hear about higher prices and lower reliability, I want you all to say, not in Georgia. All right? Now, just to give you a little bit more confidence, confidence in the fact that we have very tight terms and conditions in our contracts, these are some of what the Public Service Commission and Georgia Power have agreed to. Long-term contracts. So we sign at least 15-year, in some cases we've signed 20 and 25-year contracts with these large customers. They also agree to pay a minimum bill every month, irrespective of whether they use the power. Many people ask us, well, they probably won't be ready. You're going to be ready, but they won't be ready. And in fact, we just had confirmation of that maybe 3 weeks ago. We just met with the data center. They were supposed to come online in December. We're going to have all of our assets ready for them to go. They said they'll be at least 3 months late. So in December, they'll be taking zero power. They will still be sending us a big check. Minimum bills. They also, if for whatever reason they need to cancel their contract early, they pay us a giant termination payment, and they post lots of collateral if we have to access the cash. So these are protections for everyone. Just what the secretary talked about. Last year, so we go into the Public Service Commission every 3 years by law to present this IRP, this Integrated Resource Plan. And typically what we do every 3 years on the heels of that plan is go to the commission and say, okay, you approved all of this asset mix, these power plants, this transmission, these distribution wires, and here's how much it's going to cost us to build all of this. And inflation is going up and material costs are high, and so we need a rate increase. Well, we had done that in 2022. And so it was time for us to go again in 2025. And yes, our costs have gone up. But they are paying the cost of the build, and that excess that they're paying is going to keep everybody else's rates lower. So instead of having to ask for a rate increase, we agreed with the commission to freeze our base rates for the next 3 years. We would not have done that if we were not serving these data centers. You all pay less because data centers are paying more. We also, so this is the first item here, base rates frozen. We also have in fact, we just announced it, I guess, yesterday. We go to the commission again to talk about collecting money for storm costs. So Hurricane Helene, Jennifer mentioned Hurricane Helene. Some of you might remember that, the most damaging storm to Georgia Power ever. It cost us a lot to get the lights back on for everybody. So we go to the commission and we need to ask them to collect that money. That meant rates would have gone up. But our fuel costs have gone down. And the net of the up and the down is going to be almost $50 a year savings for everybody. So starting in June, your rate compared to last year will be lower. And the rate is like the cents per gallon at the gas station, right? Most of us look at our bill. And the bill, of course, has a volumetric component to it. The rate times the volume equals your bill. This year, if you use the same volume and your rate will be lower in June, you're going to have a lower bill. I don't know of anybody anywhere who is lowering bills for its customers. We're doing it in Georgia. And last year, when we went to the commission and said we've got to build all these new power plants for all of these customers who are coming, we also forecasted in the future that beyond this rate freeze, which lasts for 3 years, we've already committed today to give at least $100 to each customer of benefit from data centers. So we've made that commitment today. So yes, I know many of you who are Georgia Power customers are thinking, but my bill has gone up. I know Georgia Power has raised rates. Let me tell you why that was in the past. It had nothing to do with data centers. Of course, last year, for example, last July was the third hottest July on record. And everybody got their bill in August and looked at the highest bill they've ever gotten. And then they heard all of this stuff about data centers and they automatically connect the dots. That's actually not the case in Georgia. Data centers have nothing to do with what's happened over the last couple of years with Georgia Power rate increases. Now, I talked about already an IRP and a rate case in 2022. And in 2022, we went to the commission, and this was really before these big customers started coming, but we went to the commission, said exactly what I said to you all, which is we're investing in our grid, materials cost more, people cost more, so we need rates to go up. And we agreed with the commission to raise rates over the next 3 years. So a base rate increase. That was one thing that happened. The second thing that happened, and this is hallelujah, and I've already talked about Plant Vogtle. Plant Vogtle came online. Now, the deal with the commission that was struck back in 2009 was always that Georgia Power would pay for most of the costs of building that plant, and not until it came online and started producing electricity would our customers start paying for it. Well, yes, it was a long path. And it took longer, and it did cost more. Our customers did not pay that additional amount, and that is very misrepresented in the media. If you're a Southern Company shareholder, you did take it on the chin, but not our customers. But coincidentally, in 2023 and in 2024, both of those units came online, and those units are going to run for 100 years. They are two of the best operating nuclear units in the world, and we are very proud to have them. And in fact, a lot of these customers come to Georgia because we have clean energy. And Vogtle is the largest generator of clean energy in the country. So Vogtle came online. That was another increase in 2023 and another increase in 2024. Again, nothing to do with data centers. And then lastly, fuel. So in 2022, Russia invades Ukraine. The world panics. Fuel prices go up. Some of you all might remember that spike. Oil prices went up. And fortunately, the rest of this hasn't happened. Oil prices have gone up with this Iran conflict. But 3 years ago, natural gas prices went up. Coal prices even went up. The market just panicked. And we had to pay much more for natural gas and coal in the plants that we operate. And so we did have a fuel increase that went into effect in 2023. Again, much of that is rolling off. That is helping to offset the storm cost. So fuel cost, Vogtle, base rates, none of this has anything to do with data centers. Now, that's behind us, and we are stabilizing rates for the future and hopefully, and in fact, this summer, bringing them down. Nobody else is doing that. Now, I need your all's help passing that message along. And I'm going to stop here because I want to make sure that we got plenty of time for questions, because I think that a lot of what I'm saying is very different than what you're hearing or reading about. These are the facts. And we at Georgia Power need to do a better job of sharing them. Data centers in our state need to do a better job of sharing them. They will be starting to do more of that. But I appreciate this opportunity to talk with you all about this. And look, I can talk about a lot of other subjects, but I want to make sure that we are all copacetic on data centers, at least before we go. So with that, I'd love to hear from you.